With my Ratchet and Clank reviews done, I'm glad to finally move on to the next series of reviews I had in mind. That series is Sonic. And I felt like starting with some of the 3D games. Now, I wanted to do these reviews mostly being inspired by one of my favorite YouTubers, Some Call Me Johnny, as well as trying to win over YouTube's algorithm with the Knuckles series having been recently released at the time of me recording this. For my thoughts on that series without many major spoilers, check the card above, I'll have it linked. Now, with this game, there is a bit that I want to get into before we talk about the game itself. Don't worry, this review won't be as long as the Up Your Arsenal review, but just give me a little time to explain. Now, I know a ton of people have already used the Sonic had a rough transition to 3D joke a lot, but to be fair, Sonic did have a rough transition to 3D. Sega had been working on a ton of projects to bring the blue blur to 3D, one of which being 3D Blast, which, while in an isometric state, most people don't consider that 3D. And I don't hate 3D Blast, but that's not really my thing. On top of that, there was also the infamous canceled project Sonic Extreme on the Sega Saturn, which had its own difficulties, mostly because of developers being overworked and them not being able to use the engine for Nights into Dreams because Yuji Naka threatened to leave the company if they used it. There's a whole story there, and frankly, there's a lot of situations where I would think Yuji Naka's a dick for doing stuff like that, but I'm not going to get into it here. It's worth another video on its own. Hell, on top of the Sega Saturn projects that we knew about, like Sonic Extreme, there were a handful of Sega 32X projects that we only recently learned about within the last decade or so. I don't want to go too far into detail about them. A canceled Sonic games video could be a whole thing on its own. I just thought I'd bring them up in terms of Sonic Adventure, because it is kind of important to the development in a way. It is a little unfortunate to me that for a few years, the closest thing that we had to a proper 3D Sonic game was the Sonic World section of Sonic Jam. And yeah, it is a cool section, but it's more a tech demo for what a 3D Sonic could be on the Saturn, as opposed to a proper 3D game. Side note, one interesting side of this is the models used in Sonic Jam were from an earlier version of Sonic Adventure when the game was originally being made for the Sega Saturn. Again, I could go more into detail about that, but I'm just going to leave it there so I can get on with the actual review. Now, Sonic Adventure didn't properly come out until 1998 in Japan and 99 in America. Sonic Adventure was the first proper 3D Sonic game, or at least proper to what many people consider. Now, moving on to the story, it is done in a fairly interesting way, as opposed to one story that takes place over the entire game. You have 6 smaller stories that all connect at certain points. I will say this, it was a bit challenging trying to write the script for this review, mostly because of how the stories work. See, it's not that Sonic's story happens and then at a certain point you play Tails. You play through the entirety of Sonic's story, and then you play through the entirety of Tails' story, and you see what Tails was doing during Sonic's sections. It just made it a bit challenging to write a plot summary, but I did try my best. So, with that out of the way, let's move on to that story. Thousands of years ago, the Chaos Emeralds and the Master Emerald were both kept at an altar near the territory of a clan of echidnas. I don't know if this is completely confirmed, but it is speculated that this is the same clan that Knuckles is from, which does make me wonder the whole thing with Knuckles, but that's something worth getting into later. Something had happened to wipe all of them out, and in the present day, Dr. Robotnik, or Eggman as he's known from this game forward, wishes to harness this power and destroy Station Square to build Robotnik Land. In the process, the Master Emerald shatters on Angel Island and releases a water god, Chaos. The summaries I've found say either Eggman did it or Chaos did it, and no one really seems to have a definitive answer. So, for the sake of convenience, I'm going to say Chaos shattered the emerald himself somehow. Maybe Eggman found a way to release Chaos. I don't know. Anyway, with Chaos now free, it goes into the Mystic Ruins where part of it gets eaten by a frog before the rest makes its way over to Station Square, where Sonic notices the police force trying to stop it. Quickly dispatching the water creature, Sonic watches as it escapes into a conveniently placed drain as Eggman tells him from the roof that the creature he just fought was Chaos, a god of destruction. I don't know how he expects Sonic to hear him from how high up he is, but to be fair, this is Eggman. The guy could be monologuing just for the sake of monologuing. The next morning, we find Sonic snoozing at the local hotel pool as he witnesses Tails crashing his plane. He, of course, immediately goes to check up on his little buddy. Once reunited, they go over to the Mystic Ruins where Tails' workshop is before running into Eggman again. And Eggman explains his plan to them before quickly and easily taking him down. But not before Eggy himself steals the Chaos Emerald that Tails has. An emerald that Tails used for his prototype plane. Didn't know where else to add that, so thought I'd just put it there. Eggman then immediately gives Chaos this emerald, giving this water god more power before immediately leaving. He had two of his biggest threats right there and didn't really do anything. You would think he would at least sit Chaos on them, leading to a boss fight, but no, the dude just leaves. Granted, this is the same man who broke into Sonic's house and just replaced his shoes, so yeah, not really having a whole lot of faith. Anyway, Knuckles later finds Eggman in Station Square, where he follows him thinking he has a Master Emerald shard, only to realize he only has a regular Chaos Emerald, which he ends up giving to Chaos, powering him up even further. At least we actually fight Chaos here, and the Chaos 2 boss fight is okay. Sonic and Tails, in the meantime, are running around Station Square and the Mystic Ruins looking for Chaos Emeralds, hoping that as long as they can get them before Eggman can, they can eventually stop Chaos from getting more powerful, knowing that if he's sided with Eggman, he's immediately a threat. This leads them to a casino to win an emerald after playing pinball. uh, hilarious aside, canonically, Sonic spends enough time in this casino to actually build a golden statue of himself, which requires you to get 5,000 rings. We know this happens because later in Knuckles' version of this stage, which does happen after Sonic and Tails, the statue is there. Hilariously enough, this just means that Sonic has either a gambling addiction or a pinball addiction. Maybe both. Unfortunately, as Sonic and Tails are leaving the casino, they immediately get attacked by Eggman, who uses a sleeping gas on them and steals one of the emeralds that they had collected. The other one, luckily, that they got from Windy Valley, I think, they still have, so they at least have one. It's around this point that Eggman activates Gamma and has him and the other robots in the E-series that he made go search for Froggy, who has Chaos's tail, and also has a Chaos Emerald, but honestly, more because he has Chaos's tail, I guess. Continuing on with their journeys, Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles eventually all end up in the Mystic Ruins, which leads to them fighting because Knuckles believes that they have an Emerald Shard, and frankly, Sonic and Tails are just kind of defending themselves. Normally, I would give crap to Knuckles for falling for one of Eggman's tricks, but to be fair, he is worried about the Master Emerald, seeing as it's his sworn duty to protect it, and I think that would cloud his judgment, at least a little. Now, Eggman, of course, gives the 2 emeralds that he got from Sonic and Tails here to Chaos, once again. Yeah, I'm just gonna say it, this is getting repetitive. With Chaos now in its 4th form, Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles all fight it. This does make me curious about something. We see Chaos take many forms in this game, but I don't think we ever see Chaos in its 3rd or 5th forms. We know it has 7 forms, one for each emerald, but ever since the game came out, I don't think we ever saw those 2 forms, even in supplementary material. Just food for thought, I guess. Once we defeat Chaos 4, Eggman launches his egg carrier before fleeing the scene once again. Sonic and Tails in close pursuit. Knuckles deciding to stay behind to find more shards of the Master Emeralds in the Mystic Ruins area. Hot on Eggy's tail, Sonic and Tails follow him in the tornado before Eggman shoots them down, causing them not only to crash, but also get separated in 2 different areas, Sonic in Station Square and Tails in the Mystic Ruins. Which, at the very least, this has a very funny reaction from the 2 as they're crashing. Sonic starts to search for Tails in Station Square before running into his crazed stalker, Amy. Jokes aside, Amy is not as insufferable as people say she is as a stalker. In fact, she's pretty enjoyable in this game. She also has a bird, and is being chased by one of Eggman's robots, which inevitably leads them to go to Twinkle Park for some reason. I'm assuming probably to hide from the robot. In the meantime, Tails runs into Big the Cat after seeing Froggy eat a Chaos Emerald and chasing him through a desert. I don't remember the name. It's another snowboarding stage for Tails. Once Froggy hops out of Tails' hands, Unfortunately, Big is no longer an important part to the plot. He does show up at the very end and during the Chaos 6 boss, but he doesn't really do anything. He's just kind of there. The only other thing I'll add is, hilariously enough, if you watch Big's opening cutscene and leave before playing the actual game, it counts for 10% of his story. A whole 10th just by watching a small cutscene. The only boss fight in his playthrough can even be finished in a few seconds if you cast his fishing pole in the right place. Honestly, Big is a joke in this game, and it makes me wish he was optional, but every story is required to make it to the final story. Speaking of which, let's get back to the actual plot. Amy at some point gets kidnapped after she and Sonic get split up in Twinkle Park. I guess they really should have been closer, but Amy was easily distracted and Sonic is playing go-karts, I guess. I guess this means that now Sonic has two of his friends to find, which inevitably leads him to follow the robot that took Amy into the Mystic Ruins and through Red Mountain, where, luckily, he does inevitably reunite with Tails. Both of them take an experimental plane that Tails has, called the Tornado 2, to chase Eggman before they land on the egg carrier. Gamma, during this time, is given the task to watch over Amy and try and get the bird that she has from her, only for the Tin Man to get a heart and let her go. By the time Sonic and Tails go through Eggman's ship, they end up catching up with Amy before Eggman forces Gamma to fight him. Amy immediately breaks the two up before Sonic goes to finish off Eggman and, I guess, Chaos right before the base goes down. I guess during their run through Sky Chase or whatever it was, Tails and Sonic end up screwing enough of the ship up to cause it to crash. Amy tells Gamma to stop listening to Eggman before she and Tails leave the sinking ship. After that, Gamma more or less leaves the plot. He at least has more plot relevance than Big, but the only thing he does now is finish off Eggman's robots and then pretty much commit suicide, blowing up and releasing the bird that was inside of him. Sonic proceeds to fight Chaos 6 as the ship crashes before chasing Eggman off the ship. Knuckles, who hilariously found his way onto the ship looking for emerald shards, completely finishes off Chaos 6, which I guess Sonic didn't actually kill it, before returning to Angel Island with the Chaos Emeralds and the last of the Master Emerald shards to finally fix it. Eggman, feeling defeated, launches a missile as his plan B to destroy Station Square, before finding out that the missile is a dud. Wasting no more time, he quickly goes to set it off himself, with Tails in pursuit, leading to us eventually stopping him before he can fully set it off. And for all intents and purposes, that's where everyone's stories end, with Tails learning to be much more independent, Amy learning to be more confident, Knuckles finding out that he might be sad and alone for the rest of his life, and Sonic finding a nice tree to sleep under. I kinda skipped over it, but yeah, Tails does have a final boss with Eggman, which is a fun boss fight. Oh, and anyone wondering about Gamma and Big's story, Gamma ends with him blowing up, so he's pretty much writing himself out of the story, and Big finds Froggy and goes back home. They really don't have much bearing on the rest of the plot. But we're not quite done with the story yet. Feeling defeated and utterly humiliated, Eggman heads back to his base in the Mystic Ruins before learning that a part of Chaos survived all the fights. If I had to guess, maybe it was the part that Froggy ate. This small piece of Chaos attacks Eggman before going back to the Master Emerald altar where Knuckles has the Chaos Emeralds, completely powering back up. Tails, somehow learning of this, goes to tell Sonic that Angel Island is still in the ocean, leading to them to go to check on Knuckles, finding both him and Eggman lying bruised and beaten in front of the altar. Knuckles explains that Chaos was the one who attacked them, telling Sonic that, of course, the creature is still alive and took the Chaos Emeralds. Sonic almost immediately starts to head out to stop the creature before being stopped by a bright light. I kinda skipped over this character, but the bright light is actually, I guess, the spirit of Tikal. She would interrupt everyone's story to give flashbacks to before Chaos was unleashed and destroyed and wiped out the Knuckles tribe. Granted, I mostly skipped over her because all of that really wasn't super important until now. Yes, the flashbacks are important to understand why Chaos is doing what he's doing, but to be fair, the characters that she explains this to don't really need to know this information. We do, so that we have more reason to actually want to help Chaos as opposed to fully wipe it out, but when one of the most important story elements that she tells explaining Chaos is given to Gamma and Big, you know they kind of screwed that up. Now, as for the flashback that she shows Sonic here, it's probably the most important one. This is where it's finally revealed the reason that Chaos is a destructive force is because it was trying to protect both the Chow and the Emeralds, with Chief Pachacamac trying to use the Emeralds to conquer other people. Chaos was just acting in defense. Seeing as there's no other way to really get rid of Chaos, Tikal uses the Emerald's power to seal both her and the creature away, hoping that it wouldn't cause any harm to anyone ever again. Unfortunately, when the Master Emerald shattered, it unleashed Chaos into the world, nothing able to stop it. This creature will destroy everything just in anger over Pachacamac trying to conquer the world. Sonic, snapping back to the present, realizes they have to get the last emerald before Chaos can, or else the world itself could be doomed. Racing back to the Mystic Ruins, Sonic and Tails find where the Tornado 2 crashed after Big took it off of the egg carrier, and are about to get the emerald before Chaos appears and takes it before their eyes. This is it. Chaos has finally become its final form, with nothing left to stop it. Eggman even tries blasting a laser from his egg carrier, with it not even making a dent, as Chaos easily shoots a beam of its own, destroying the egg carrier, causing it to crash into the now flooded Station Square. Tikal explains to Sonic that Chaos is power enriched by the heart, and granted, it's a pretty corny line in my eyes, but it's true. Chaos is full of the negative energy that he was able to take from the Chaos Emeralds. It's weird and hard to explain. Frankly, I don't even understand how the negative energy thing works because Sonic Adventure is kind of the only game that really shows off this. I think Sonic X used the idea once, but that's it. That being said, the negative energy works to Chaos's advantage because he's full of rage and anger and sadness and everything that made him as powerful as he is. If I had to guess, the negative energy thing is an excuse to have Chaos drain the emeralds of their power and still have Sonic go Super Saiyan during the final boss fight. Which, to me, is a really cool boss fight. Gameplay-wise, it's nothing grand, but it's cool and climactic. To be fair, again, gameplay-wise, there's nothing really special about this boss fight. You really just dodge any attacks that Chaos sends your way while ramming into them a few times before he finally goes down. At least we get to listen to Open Your Heart playing while we constantly ram our face into the giant water monster. And Open Your Heart is one of my favorite songs in the Sonic franchise. At least until Sonic Frontiers and its basically heavy metal soundtrack for its boss fights. Once we finally defeat Chaos, they revert back to their base form and leave with Tikal. Presumably with all of the negative energy finally unleashed. It's good. I guess they finally pass on. But Station Square is still destroyed and mostly underwater. I guess Eggman can now make Eggman Land. So, like Tails says,
all's well that ends well, right?
I guess that joke was bad enough for Sonic to leave the scene, so I guess with him I should get on to my final thoughts. And I genuinely love this game. Yeah, it's aged, and to be fair, can be clunky, but it's still a 3D platformer that I love, and it's one that I feel is a pillar of classic 90s 3D platformers. Hell, one of my earliest memories of this game is seeing a friend play the Chaos boss fight while I was over at their house. And that boss fight made me curious. I personally wouldn't play the game for myself until, I want to say, 2012-ish, and that was on a demo for the Xbox 360. Since then, I've gotten a few copies, including a Dreamcast and a copy of that original version. More or less. I think it's a greatest hits-esque re-release, but it's still the Dreamcast version. Now, as for gameplay, Sonic, to me, is fairly close to his original Genesis games, with you mainly focusing on just getting to the end of the stage, either by grabbing an emerald or hitting an animal capsule. Tails is fairly similar. Granted, you have him racing Sonic to the end of the stage, and if Sonic makes it before Tails, you have to do it again, but they're more or less very similar. Knuckles' gameplay has him searching for the Master Emerald shards, and they are some of my favorite sections of the game. And granted, Knuckles I enjoy because it's mostly exploration based. Yeah, you could be spending a large time just searching for a specific shard, but it is cool seeing all of these levels. I enjoy all three of these gameplay styles because, for me, they are the closest to their Genesis counterparts. That, and to be fair, Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles are the ones with the most plot relevance. Amy's gameplay has her running through stages while avoiding one of Eggman's robots. I will give her credit, she does have more plot relevance than Gamma and Big, but that's really all I can say. I don't hate her gameplay, but even I kind of admit it would be nice if these three characters were more optional as opposed to required. Gamma and Big don't really do much in this story. Yeah, Gamma does have plot relevance at the beginning and I guess halfway through his story, but Big just does not need to be in this game. I will say this, I do enjoy both of their gameplays, but they really need to be optional and not required. Again, like Amy, they just don't serve much bearing on the plot to a point where we don't need them. That being said, as someone who is a fan of stuff like Ratchet and Clank, Gamma's gameplay is enjoyable to me, like I said. Big's gameplay, on the other hand, it's just fishing. And frankly, if I wanted to play Sega Bass Fishing, I'd play that instead. It wouldn't be as bad if they were optional, but like I mentioned, you have to play through all 6 gameplay styles to even unlock the final story. And I'm just gonna warn you guys now, that problem doesn't really get better from here. I think we only have like 3 Sonic games that don't have split storylines, outside of maybe spin-offs and the classic games. I don't hate the idea of multiple stories, but I'll explain my problems when we get to some of the later games. Let's just say, for now, having multiple stories be required just to unlock the actual ending of the game kind of annoys me. Whereas games like Undertale, there are multiple endings, but you don't need to unlock all of them just to get that final ending. You just need to play through the game once. That being said, again, Sonic Adventure is one of my favorite 3D platformers. And yeah, it is still clunky, but I feel the game, for the most part, still holds up. If you have a chance, try the game. Hell, if you can, try a demo of it and see if you like it. It goes up for sale on Steam a ton of times, so I'd say grab it there, especially because there are some fantastic mods for the PC version that make this game even better. However, suppose you want to play an unmodified version. In that case, there is the Xbox 360 version, which luckily is backwards compatible with the Xbox One and the Series X and S. Personally, I love the Dreamcast original and the GameCube versions, which, granted, the GameCube version has its own problems, but it's nostalgic for me. Now, I played the game on PC for this review, and I'm sure you guys noticed with some of the mods that I used in this video. Granted, that's mostly because I reused gameplay from me and my friends' playthrough of the game over on our channel, Gear Playthroughs. And I do recommend the PC version, with a few caveats. Now, when playing the game, I highly recommend the Better SADX mod that fixes a lot of problems that the PC version has. That being said, I think that's about all I can really say about this first game for now. So next time, we have a bit of a shadow looming overhead. So, I'll see you guys then. Once we finally defeat Chaos, they refort.